Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know who I am, I'm Nick Rose. I'm Chris's second son. I was always the middle child, maybe a bit of the black sheep when I was younger in the family, but ironically, I think I've later in life followed, a lot in my dad's footsteps. He definitely had a very positive influence on all of our lives. Hannah, is he on his way? Oh, there he is. Okay. So, yeah, Martin's here now. So, thanks everybody for joining us. We're here gathering together in celebration, first off, remembering Chris Rose and also celebrating the amazing life that he had. So, this is kind of a combination of a bit of a talk and then sharing some pictures, really, of first as he grew up, all the way up to later in life. And so just kind of going over what I'm calling the beginning of an era. So Christopher Duncan Rose, husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, friend, affectionately known to family as Dad, Uncle Chris, or Papa. And Papa being a term that I think his grandfather was called when he was growing up. So he was born in England on December 11th, 1935. Has a twin sister, Caroline Barlow, sister Prue Hildebrand, and was born to parents Marjorie and Duncan Rose. He grew up in Umtali, Rhodesia, which is now Matari, Zimbabwe, where he attended boarding school, Plumtree. Us as kids, we were born, my brother Martin was born in Zimbabwe. We lived in Canada. The rest of his family stayed in Africa on the other side of the globe. So we didn't really have, many occasions to actually, we never went there as kids. We couldn't afford for us all to travel to Africa. Dad, we'd go on vacation. Twice we went to England and Norway as kids. My mom, Gina, Chris's wife, is Norwegian. We as kids would go on to Norway with Mom, and Dad would go to Africa for a few weeks, and then he would come and join us in Norway. That was his chance to get to see his family. Wasn't until later in life that I ended up going there. I took my son Matthew on a trip. So that was 3 generations of the Rose men. And we went with his wife, our mother, Gina. And that was incredible to see where he grew up and kind of filled that bit of a void that we didn't actually have a full understanding of because we didn't see it firsthand until later in life. So he studied after going to boarding school at Plumtree in Rhodesia. He studied at St. John's College in York, England, where he did his teacher training. He went on to do a specialty qualification teaching students who were deaf and hard of hearing at Manchester University, followed by a master's degree in education at Birmingham University in the late 70s. We went as a family and lived there for a year, which was an amazing experience while he did that. And then later, in 2009, he was awarded an honorary doctorate here at TRU, Doctor of Letters. So a bit of a compilation of black and white photos from back then. On the left, you can see a picture of him. He's on the right, and his twin sister Caroline's on the left. On the top middle, his sister Prue on the left, him in the middle, and Caroline on the right. And in the bottom, you can see him as a toddler to then being probably in his teens, wearing his Plumtree boarding school blazer. And then on the right, venturing off to take on the world. They're in London, probably in his early 20s, dressed very astutely and ready to venture on in life. There's a bit of a theme behind that, so I'll carry on to that in a bit. So how him and our mother, how they met, it's really, I term it a bit of a fairy tale story. They've been married 64 years. Mom's name, Gina, her full name is Anna Regina Tiedemann, and as I said, Norwegian. They met in London, England. My understanding, my story or details may not be 100% correct, but that they went to a finishing school for a summer. He was 21 and she was 18, and that's where they met. That was the one summer. He probably wrote letters and phoned, and back then a phone call was a huge amount of money, so it was probably 3 minutes long, one a year, okay, and a letter a week. But he traveled back to Norway that following summer to ask for her hand in marriage, and then went back to Rhodesia and worked for 3 years. They didn't see each other during that time. Letter a week and one phone call a year. I think maybe a bit more at that point when you're engaged. But you were in college for 4 years? Okay, at the same time. Okay. He went back to Norway, and each of these trips was on a ship. It was a 2-week journey, right? It wasn't like hopping on an airplane like nowadays. He went back, they got married, and then they returned to Rhodesia and lived there for 2 years, and that's when my brother Martin was born. They then went back to England, and he taught in a school for young deaf boys, I think. And then during that time, he entertained a few job offers, or was looking, well, maybe they're not going to stay in England. He was offered 3 different jobs in Canada, the first being in Churchill, Manitoba, on the west shore of Hudson Bay. Interestingly enough, later in life, actually probably only about 3 years ago, as a bucket list trip, he went to Churchill because he wanted to see what it was actually like, and he did that on his own. Mom said, no way, I'm not going. The other was in Old Crow in the Yukon, which is also, it's in the Arctic, northern Yukon. The third choice was Norgate Elementary School in North Vancouver, so thank God it was the latter, right? You can imagine how we would have turned out living up in the Arctic, chasing off polar bears. So a couple pictures here early on. The 2 of them on the left there, probably close to when they first met, and then when they got married, and then on the right later. Not sure when that one was taken, but you can see almost identical views of the 2 of them. And that was 1961 when they got married. Moving forward, we lived in North Vancouver, and so that's the 3 of us. So my older brother Martin on the left. He's seated here in the middle. If you're in the church, you listened to a very nice eulogy that he gave earlier. That's me, Nick, in the center, and then Sarah on the right. And she's sitting here right in the front row with her husband, Don. Sarah and I are 11 months apart. Sorry for you, Mom. Yeah. So here's just some family portraits. So, as you look on the left, we're pretty young. We're probably not too embarrassed about having a family photo. In the middle one there, you can see most of us straight-faced. Okay, get this over with, as typical teens or preteens are. On the right, picture of Mom and Dad at Hornby Island, which, basically was, I moved forward here. We'll talk about these summer trips every second year, doing a family reunion at Hornby Island. But so growing up, Dad being a teacher and a school principal, he had summers off, so summer vacations were pretty good. We did a lot of fun things. So this one location here, Dad had a teacher in his school at Fitzwater who they owned a ranch. It was a fishing and hunting resort, or ranch, I guess you'd call it, called Lucky Strike, up in the Caribou. And we would go there every summer, and of course we would venture off. Dad was quite adventurous, did a lot of hiking and whatnot when he grew up in Rhodesia. But he wasn't much of a fisherman. But we, of course, you can see on the left in the middle is Martin, with a nice fish. And in the middle is myself and a good family friend, Steve Gandy. And then Sarah on the right. The two of us in the center have become avid fishermen. Steve on the left is a commercial fisherman, and my passion when I'm not working, which soon in about a month's time I'll be spending more time fishing, but it really brought out the bug in us, and really that was one of the the things that we always look forward to every year was to go and spend time together, and go and have lots of different adventures to enjoy. So moving forward, as I was mentioning, these family reunions, so as time went on, our families evolved, and you can see just various people intermixed in these photos as time went on, but so that was 2011, now 2015. So these family reunion or holidays at Hornby Island for a week every couple of years ended up being the source of a lot of fun and practical joke playing. So I think after I talk, or Sarah's going to say some words, but then three of the oldest cousins are going to share some stories, I think, that might be related to our times at Hornby Island. So, but yeah, you can always see Dad. He's always got a smile on his face, and that's just kind of part of who he was, or to us, who he is, really. So, moving on to this next slide, the category that I'm calling this is legacy building. I don't know if anybody on the left photo or the person in the middle can make out who that is. Yeah, it's Prince Philip. Yeah. Oh yeah? Okay, interesting. Oh, nice. Okay. Do you remember what year that was? I'm thinking 1967. 69? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that. So, I think to me that picture really signifies, so if it was 69, Dad would have been 34. But, I think it kind of exemplified or signified where he saw himself going, or possibly just by chance where he ended up going in life. But I believe he had more aspirations than just to become your average Joe. And so, apologies to anybody's name in the room or even a relative's name is Joe. That's not intended that way, but so this picture was taken at the Jericho School for Deaf, and I believe it was a first aid demonstration, and Prince Philip came and attended it. There's a bit of a backstory there. That it wasn't just a simple who he showed up. It turns out Dad's uncle, Sir Norman Kipping, who was a great uncle to us, was friends with Prince Philip. And so he had told Prince Philip that Dad lived and worked at Jericho School for the Deaf, so he made a point of going and visiting. So it's maybe not quite as grand of a story that it just by chance happened, but nonetheless, I think it just kind of shows that even at a young age, Dad was aspiring to be someone who eventually made a big difference. And later, the story that I remember, and I think Bob Cowden can kind of maybe correct this, but I always thought growing up that when Dad was at Fitzwater School as principal, a story of Pierre Trudeau, who actually came, and I thought Dad had arranged some kind of, a fundraiser and had Pierre Trudeau giving a talk in the school field, but it turns out that he was on a campaign trail, and it was while he was Prime Minister, and he had an event next door at Norcam School in the field. And he had come by Fitzwater School because he actually needed to use the washroom. So he apparently showed up at, and Dad being the principal, oh, well, here's Pierre Trudeau, of course he can. Well, he and probably Bob went off and gathered up whichever teachers they could and lined them up in the hallway. So when he came out of the washroom, they all shook his hand but growing up, when you kind of look up to your father and you think, oh, this incredible man, he had Pierre Trudeau at his school. It wasn't quite the same story that I actually had thought, but nonetheless, it still is out there. He still did get to meet him, and quite amazing story to tell. So here in Kamloops, when we first arrived, he was at Fitzwater and Overlander schools as principal, and then he actually after going to England, I think Bob, you can correct me, I think it is around 1980 ish. He then decided he wanted to go into regular education and became principals at Happyvale and Beatty schools. And then upon retirement, he got involved with Giant Steps West. Mark Spina, I think, was largely involved there. And then the Chris Rose Center for Autism Therapy when it was renamed, and Wanda Eddy, she'll be saying a few words later. And then he was involved as a school board trustee in Kamloops here. And so just a list of various awards and recognitions that he got. The Centennial Medal here in Kamloops, Pioneer Spirit Award. Then he got a Doctorate of Letters here at TRU in 2009. And then 2010 he got the Order of BC, followed by 2012 Queen Elizabeth Jubilee Medal, and then the OWL Award in the School District of 73 in Kamloops here. So on that back table as you come in, I think some of you signed the guest book. You can see a lot of he was very proud of these accomplishments, and we as a family are as well. I think the right thing to have done, and it was actually his wish, was to share them at his funeral. I just grouped them together. So he was at Beatty for 11 years. I just grouped Happyvale with Beatty together. Yeah, 4 years at Happyvale, I think, and 11 at Beatty. But you can see the pictures of the awards on the right. The Order of BC on the top left, TRU Doctor of Letters. The Queen Jubilee Medal on the bottom left, and then more recently this letter on the left is actually from Premier David Eby, a condolence letter to Mom, and that came a week or two after he passed away. He didn't know David Eby. We think it's related to the Order of BC, but still pretty impressive or amazing to get that kind of recognition. So that's a picture of him when he got his doctorate here at TRU. So Dad, or Chris, was a passionate teacher, role model, with a philosophy of equality and inclusion. And so, largely that was based on his involvement with special education, But we were, as kids and continue even today, taught never to judge or look at someone differently, to treat them as everyone is equals. So with his background teaching the deaf, we learned basic sign language as young kids. We had, we actually, when we were very young, we lived at Jericho School for 2 years. I was too young. Martin probably has some memories there. We sponsored a girl who lived with us here in Kamloops for a year who was deaf. She lived in Salmo and the Kootenays. They didn't have the resources there to have classes that specialized with people who were deaf. So we had her, she came and lived with us for a year. And that was kind of one of the things that Dad, and I talk about Dad, but it wasn't just Dad, it was Mom as well. And we often visited Fitzwater and Overlander schools and integrated with the students. And just, like I say, we learned to treat everybody the same. We're all, we're all humans, essentially. So he encouraged us to follow in life career goals with a primary focus on happiness. And, me growing up, I think I mentioned earlier, as a bit of a black sheep, as a teenager, maybe hung out with a few wrong friends or whatever it was, but I wouldn't say wrong friends. I was obviously, part of it. But at the age of finishing high school, I had that little talk, your father would, as he probably had when he was younger. I was given 3 choices. First choice was get a job, live at home, and pay rent. Well, we were in the middle of a recession in the early 80s, so that one was hard to do. Move out, get a job, and pay your own rent. Or go to college, pay your own tuition, and live at home for free. Well, which one do you think I took, right? So that led to my first career, and as I put it, as a professional student. So I attended Caribou College here prior to it being TRU. I had 2 seasons passes at Todd Mountain, which is now Sun Peaks. I think I did 25 days of skiing each year. Life was pretty good, right? I then carried on for another 7 years at university. So I ended up going to UBC and got a bachelor's and a master's degree in engineering. So that was the father influence that took me a little while to kind of realize and get on the right path, but that's where I ended up, later in life, and helped me to get a fairly rewarding career. And as Martin in his eulogy earlier, or actually I think it was Matthew, letter that came from his sister and her husband in Africa, was that Dad had an amazing ability to laugh at himself and not at others, and that really developed deep friendship and respect with people. He embraced education, friendships, traveling, and those are way more important than monetary items. So it wasn't important to have the best stereo system or nicest car. Those other things came first. And so his philanthropy was really through volunteering, and involved with the Kamloops Board of Education, Social Planning Council, Mayor's Task Force for People with Disabilities, United Way Cabinet, and Ass Wellness Board of Directors. And I'm probably missing, some items here for sure. So on to the next slide. So he had a love for children and education. So there was an annual tradition, Dad and a friend of his, Ian, neighbor, Santa's helpers, I guess I should say, and also as the Easter Bunny. So depending on where you lived in Kamloops, you might have caught a glimpse of Santa's helpers traipsing around on a sleigh, or pulling a sleigh, or the Easter Bunny dressed in a full set of undersized, stretchy long johns, bunny ears, nose, and bushy tail, revealing more bodily shapes than should have been. leaving us kids to cower in embarrassment. And I didn't share pictures of him as an Easter Bunny because I didn't think it was appropriate. So other things that he organized, or not just himself, but was involved with, was the Chris Rose Golf Tournament for the Chris Rose Center for Autism Therapy, Annual Walk for Autism. I think back in the earlier days, it was just, we called them walkathons, and they were fundraising, I think, for Fitzwater School. I'm not sure if I got that right or not. He's a member of the Rotary Club. He also volunteered training people in other countries' special education. Places like Armenia. I think he went to Armenia at least 2, maybe 3 times. Of course, I think they paid for the airfare and his board and keep, but it was all volunteered time. Trinidad, Kamloops, and Vancouver, and also 2 on the farm. One of the farms that his sister Prue and her husband Rupert have in Zimbabwe. They have a school there for the workers on the farms, raised, growing bananas and tobacco, but so there's a school on that farm, and with the Rotary Club, they fundraised to actually get desks and books for the students. They didn't have that before. So this next slide, I'm calling it lifelong devotion. One of the things that we often take for granted or forget is that in life successes for individuals is the given support for partners, that it's not just the accomplishments of one. And the support that he had from our mother and his wife Gina. The adoring affection and love that they had for each other is endearing and special. So I think often when we look at a vast number of awards sitting out in the back, that I think there should be another set of awards. There should be like a set of medals, plaques, and awards really for you, Mom. On to the last slide here. You can just look at the look in his face there. The legacy of love and relationships that he maintained with us as family, and friendliness towards others. Martin put it pretty well earlier. It was, for me, I'd forgotten really how friendly he was, and you'd go and visit him in the hospital. He's lying in his bed, and literally someone would walk down the hall, and you'd get that little glimpse of them walking by the door. Oh, hello, and people would they'd stop, they'd come in, and they would take the time, as he would with them, to have that chat. Didn't matter who you were. He would treat everybody the same, and they just everybody just loved him, right? And so he always had this constant smile on his face and friendly British colonial demeanor, and I think that characterized him to a T. So we're going to carry on now. So this is a bit. I'm an engineer, so I like to have things kind of laid out. So it's an outline of the next set of talks that people are going to give. So my sister Sarah is going to get up and say a few thanks. And then grandchildren Ben, Megan, and Hannah will share some of their memories. Bob and Joan Cowden, Dan Hines. I haven't actually seen Dan. There you are. Okay. Dan will come up, Wanda, and then we're going to hand over the the Order of BC to Wanda for the Chris Rose Center. So that'll be, I think, Wanda, we just want to premise that it's on loan. If ever the name changes or whatnot, we'd appreciate you know. Okay, yeah. I'm glad to hear it, yeah. And then, so that will be handed over. Then we're going to have a short intermission. And you can kind of get the feel here. We want to make this happy, fun celebration event. So we're going to have an open mic. And, anybody who feels like coming up and saying some words, no matter what it is, it's just, let's just share some experiences and have some laughs, and then that'll be it. So we'll have during the intermission, we're going to have some food brought in. I think looks like it might be there now. So people can get up, start wandering around, mingling and chatting. When we get to the open mic, just feel free. If you want to chat in the back, we'll try to, make sure we can still hear the people talking. But let's have a bit more informal, kind of a get-together. And so I think at this point, Sarah, do you want to come up and...
I don't know if I can do this after those last two slides. Hello, everyone. I recently said to my mom that it seems strange that the world carries on in its busy, frenzied manner, and yet to us, we feel a strange, unfamiliar pause as we process a void that has replaced Dad's presence. Mom replied, like no one has noticed the ant that has fallen off the hill. But I think it's safe to say that we are all feeling this void. I've also compared this time or these feelings to a bird that has flown into a window and is now stunned while resting on the ground. Dad would want us to keep going, to embrace this life, this beautiful life. He said to me recently that life is precious, don't waste it. Life can change in a minute. On April 6th, Dad's life drastically changed, and so did ours. We were faced with unique challenges each day. Each day seemed to present something new to overcome. But throughout this journey, I was amazed at Dad's spirit, his will to keep trying, his ability to be kind, despite having everything taken from him. The things that were closest to his heart were illuminated. His love of our mom, Gina, who he called his sweetheart, of his mother, Marjorie, his sisters, Caroline and Prue, and his homeland, Africa. Dad had a unique gift of being able to attract people that adored him, and he reflected the same appreciation towards them. One person I met during our past 5-month journey, who knew Dad as a principal, called him a love magnet. He shared a genuine interest in the people he met. Although the past months presented many challenges, there were many golden nuggets that appeared along the way as I tried to help Dad make his way back home to Seniors Village to Mom. I couldn't have made this happen had there not been certain people guiding and supporting me along the way. I would like to thank some of these people, and although these are just a few of the masses of friends that wanted to help, we could feel a community in the background, sending prayers, wishes, and hopes for Dad's recovery. First, I would like to thank my family for their support and continued efforts to help Dad and myself. It has been a challenging time. I would like to thank the staff at Royal Inland Hospital, the doctors, nurses, and care aides. In particular, Nurse Becky, who loved Dad and helped me to find my way as his advocate, who came to give him a kiss goodbye at the end of his journey. For Granny, Dad's mom, for answering my prayers. For Dr. Rachel Cook, who was more than our doctor. She became a compassionate family friend who adored Dad and called him one of her heroes. The staff at Seniors Village, Amy and Kara, for somehow finding a placement, for Dad, for Nurse Bridget, a true angel at the end of Dad's journey. I couldn't have made it through the last weeks without your guidance. The night nurses, Divine and Plessy, for softening the darkness at the end of Dad's life. We felt the support system that was surrounding us, even though we had to ask for privacy. We knew you were there, we could feel it. For friends that kept showing up week after week to offer help, Bob and Joan Cowden, Peter Tilt, Jean Crow, Sheila and Brian Ewart, Francis Barnett, Brad Henry, Bob Purdy, Dan Hines, Victor for showing up in perfect timing, for Wanda, who was willing to shake things up with me and supported my homeward bound mission for Dad. As challenging as this period of time was for Dad and for us, it was softened because of friends like you. Thank you. We thank you all for your supportive messages, for checking in when we could barely find the energy to respond. Dad loved his family, his friends, and his community. He would want us all to live fully and to embrace the memories of all that we got to share with him. I will finish with a poem that I recently found in a little notebook tucked away in Dad's desk, not in his dress. It's called Farewell, My Friends by Rabindranath Tagore. Farewell, my friends. It was beautiful as long as it lasted. The journey of my life. I have no regrets whatsoever said. The pain I'll leave behind. Those dear hearts who love and care, and the strings pulling at the heart and soul. The strong arms that held me up when my own strength let me down. At every turning of my life, I came across good friends. Friends who stood by me, even when the time raced me by. Farewell, farewell, my friends. I smile and bid you goodbye. No, shed no tears, for I need them not. All I need is your smile. If you feel sad, do think of me, for that is what I'll like. When you live in the hearts of those you love, remember them, you never die. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to what we refer to as the cousins. So Hannah, Ben, and what they're Megan, yeah. Okay. Do you want to move down a little?
For shorty with me?
Is that good?
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Hannah. I'm the eldest of the grandchildren, and I'm here with cousins Ben and Megan. 3 of the 7 grandchildren. We've also got Matthew. Why can't I see him? Oh, there he is. Matthew, Lou, Luch, and Cyrus in the audience as well. We'll be referring to Chris by his name to us, Bappa, also affectionately known as Bumpa. And it means so much to be here with all of you today. Family, friends, and the many people whose lives he touched in his unique and unforgettable ways. To us, he wasn't just the charismatic host or the man with impressive accomplishments, but yes, he was those too. He was our Bappa, a man who managed to make every visit, every meal, and every silly moment feel like an event. And as his grandkids, we had a front row seat to some of his lesser known talents, ones you might not have seen unless you spent time with him around his family. So on that note, we'll share a few examples today. One thing that you should know about Bappa, he was always game for anything. And when I say anything, I mean anything. Our favorite thing to do was prank Bappa. He always was so keen for a good laugh. We would hide under his bed and play funny music to catch him as he was falling asleep. We would craft concoctions in the kitchen, such as a chocolate-covered pickle for him to find on his next bathroom break. I have one prank story in particular that's kind of worth sharing. Now, before I share the story, we want to acknowledge that this was all in good fun and in no way to poke fun at anyone. Bappa was actually an early supporter of many inclusive community causes and fundraising events. One summer, on our family trip to Hornby Island, my cousin Megan and I decided he needed a new look as we were preparing for our cousin Matthew's birthday. So naturally, we designed him a custom bathing suit, complete with glitter, sequins, the whole 9 yards. Bappa, he didn't just wear it, he owned it. His hair was done, makeup on. Our whole family was there to witness his great outfit as he delivered our other cousin, Matthew, his birthday cake to him. I'll say I've never seen a child run away from his own birthday cake so fast. We were in a giggle of fits the rest of the trip.
Even though we were the ones to start the pranks on Bappa, he always had some way to try and get us back. He was the kind of person who believed that if you were going to dish it out, you better be ready to take it back also. While our cousin pranks consisted of hours of planning, getting every family member involved in our schemes, and executing them perfectly, Bappa's pranks on us were always with the best of cheeky intentions. However, they were rarely successful. This one time, he was on his way up to the loft where the cousins all slept on our family vacations in Hornby with a bucket of water and ice that he had planned to pour on our heads. And he sabotaged himself before he could even get up the stairs because we heard him giggling from far away. And I think we probably also heard a big ouch as he bonked his head on the low lofted ceiling on the way up the stairs. Other examples of his retribution included sprinkling pine needles in our spaghetti and maybe a toothbrush dipped in salt. The mystery never lasted long, though, as he'd be right behind the corner just laughing away to himself. Our summers often continued in this manner, trying to outprank one another. However, when all the jokes were done for the evening and he relinquished as the pranked and not the pranker, we'd often take walks as a family. And I have beautiful memories of him interrupting our conversation to trot along and link arms with us as he would insist that we skip down the road together. Through all of it, he reminded us not to take ourselves too seriously or life. He laughed at his own expense, never minded being the punchline, and taught us that the real trick to life is to stay humble, stay curious, and always find the humor.
As you can tell, Bappa taught us how to get buttoned up, but also how to let your hair down, even if it was just a couple hairs from a balding, messy comb-over. Bappa loved to entertain, whether it was full house or just one of us stopping by for lunch. The thought of being able to get out his silverware for a proper polish got him rosy in his cheeks, no pun intended. He was always excited to dress up in his Sunday best, his closet resembling what we thought as kids was a tickle trunk. We would always go into his closet and dress up in his clothes. Funny enough, I'm actually wearing his clothes right now. He inspired us. Oh no. The Knickerbockers, yeah. Sorry. He always inspired, in our later years, sorry about that, I lost my spot. In our later years, we gave him a run for his money on that front, where he always instilled his need for manners, and it's something we've cherished later in life very much so. In our later years, we did give him a run for his money on that front, drinking wine from mason jars or doing shots of sherry with him at Hornby Island. His social calendar was as packed as this room. We don't know how best he kept up. He did try and help her out by taking a couple cooking classes with his old cronies, He learned how to mash avocado, call it a dip, how to throw mango in a salad, or call hot mustard a side. And of course, no gathering was complete without one of his famous speeches. You could count on him not letting one dinner or meal go without raising a glass to something or someone. But let's be honest, Bestie was the real hero behind Buppa's entertaining success. And to that note, Buppa wouldn't be who he is today if it wasn't for all the strong, beautiful women that supported him throughout the years. Bestie, my mom, Hannah, Megan, Monica, the list goes on. He even tried to be a strong woman a couple points in his life. If you know, you know. I think it's because he looked up and cared for each and every one of them so much. Bupsy had many traditions he'd share with us as grandchildren and with the family during our get-togethers. But the one that we hated and learned to enjoy the most was his uncoordinated family photos at one point during the evenings. The roses are beautiful on their own, but if you don't coordinate them, it can get pretty messy. He always took care of us grandkids, and one of those traditions we're going to share with you today. And don't worry, we won't be getting you dressed up or asking you to take a group photo.
As Ben had mentioned, one tradition that us grandkids remember quite fondly is that every time we left his house, he'd hand us gummy worms. And not just one, but 3. One for each hand and one for your pocket, he would say. It was his way of saying, take a little bit of sweetness with you. So as our cousins Matt and Lewis pass around the gummy worms, we invite you to take one in honor of Buppa, who gave so much of his sweetness to everybody who was lucky enough to know him. We'll remember his laughter, his generosity, and his love, the 3 things that we will carry with us always. Thank you.
Okay, while everybody snacks down on a gummy worm, I'll invite up, so Bob and Joan Cowden, basically Bob, school principal, senior sports advocate, Joan, school teacher, school board trustee, both very good friends of Chris's or Buppa's. So I think, Bob, we'll start with you, or if you want to both come up, and then you'll just take whatever time you need there. Yeah. Okay, and then when Joan talks, I'll bring that down. Sure.
Hello. Over our lifetime, there were moments and times that are packed with emotional power. And today is one of those times. Chris Rose, his infectious smile, his warm and welcoming grin, his gentle manner, his focus on big plans embraced everyone who he met and everyone who he knew. His strong family values and his relationship with Gina and his children, Martin, Nick, and Sarah, their partners, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren, are pillars of a strong family life. Chris's driving and never-ending support for his community and its growth is remarkable. As an educator, he valued his profession. He once shared with me his belief. He said, "Our kids, our students are our leaders. Children are our most valuable resource. They are our future." That is a value that Chris believed in. This directed his involvement in developing programs and creating projects. 53 years ago, I met Chris Rose. Chris was interviewing new teachers for positions at Fitzwater School, a school for special needs students. The school was under the supervision of the Kamloops School District, having previously been started by a local society for the handicapped. The nature of the school resembled nothing that I had ever seen before. However, The energy and enthusiasm of Chris Rose and his plans and his ideas for program building were electrifying. Chris brainstormed with me his visions and dreams of what could be done. His eyes glistened and danced with excitement. He was building a team, and he wanted me to be part of his staff. I worked with Chris for 8 years at Fitzwater School and Overlander School. From the very first day, Chris shared his belief and practice that students with unique and difficult circumstances would have support around them to ensure success in a program that was moving forward in a positive direction. He built a staff of caring, supportive individuals who came from a wide-ranging varieties of backgrounds. Chris built a foundation for success, a belief that we were doing something right. We were opening the door for the future for our students. The new and exciting programs that emerged at Fitzwater School and then Overlander Training Center were unbelievable. We began integrating students into programs and classes in local elementary schools. The integration process promoted by Chris has grown by enormous leaps and bounds over the past 50 years. Chris built a student exchange program on a model of integration. So 10 students from Fitzwater School, buddied with 10 students from George Hilliard Elementary School, and we traveled to Toronto and exchanged with 20 students in an integrated program there. 2 other chaperones and I drove to Calgary in 2 donated vans and flew to Toronto for a week homestay program and guided tours of the Toronto Niagara area. 2 weeks later, 20 students from Toronto came to Kamloops and stayed with their exchange partners. Chris set up a wonderful experience for the group in the Kamloops area, and it included campouts at the Douglas Lake Ranch property. The Douglas Lake staff took on this project of hosting the student exchange program. They did a quarter horse demonstration for the kids. It was an amazing and very unique experience for all of us. This trip was designed and set up by Chris Rose. He came up with the idea to finance the cost of the trip through donations. Okay. Well, that winter we spent time bagging a pinch of marigold seeds into a small Ziploc bag, stapling them to a greeting card, and sent them out to businesses and people within the Kamloops community. It was unbelievable the depth and level of support that Chris Rose received for this student exchange program in the early 70s of an elementary school with Fitzwater School to go to Toronto. Chris always had a vision of the big picture, moved programs forward in a very unique way. He realized the need for Fitzwater and Overlander students to get out into the community, and to make this work, we needed a school bus, and if we got a school bus, you need a full-time driver. Well, Chris made this happen. He made it happen with the support of the local central office. That bus now opened the door to numerous events and opportunities for our students. Instantly, we had teams that could travel to other schools for games, and lo and behold, we saw some integrated sports programs take hold. We even traveled to the University of Victoria to participate in a provincial track and field meet, which was the stepping stone to the Special Olympics program in British Columbia. The bus became the tool to initiate a work experience for our students. The dimension of this program has grown in the past 50 years is absolutely superb. Community service, caring attitudes is what grew out of that program. I am sure Chris joined Rotary and other clubs in the Kamloops community to connect organizations to his schools and to show gratitude for the support that he received. In the early years of the Variety Club Telethon, Chris secured a donation of a brand new 12-passenger van. This only happened as a result of his energy, his drive, and his foresight. Chris initiated a multitude of programs and creative endeavors to support his students and his teachers and his staff. The Sorrento Center was Fitzwater School's campout spot for a number of years. Now, this is where Chris would tell us stories about his boarding school experiences in Rhodesia. One tale that I loved and I've never forgotten, and you've got to build the image of this, is Chris telling us about how when you went to the washroom, and so we went to the outdoor washroom as a group, and he pulled out a broom handle, and Chris began beating the lid of the toilet. Now, he wanted to do that to ensure that we understood that when he went to private school, you ensured that you took the broom handle out, you beat the lid to knock any snakes back into the pit. So we did that at Sorrento. We beat the lid and knocked back the snakes back into the pit for Chris. And you got to put this together because this is truly Chris Rose. It's all done with a smirk, a smile, and his great sense of humor. I believe that Chris lived by the motto, to take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of each other, and take care of your community. I also believe that Chris's goal was to build social responsibility and to nurture a positive school community. He honored his staff that he worked with. He valued the teaching profession. He collaborated with his teams to format the direction their school would take. Chris believed that together we can make a difference. We were in a partnership. We were in a partnership with our parents and with our community. I admire Chris's management style, his friendly and welcoming manner, the energy and effort that he put into his projects were amazing. Chris Rose was my principal. He was my mentor. He was my friend. Nelson Mandela said, "What counts in life is not the mere fact of that we have lived. It is what difference we have made in the lives of others." And that was Chris Rose. Always working hard to make a difference, and that is what Chris did his entire life.
Just quickly, anybody's thirsty? I'll raise it, I'll lower it down, just a sec, Joan. There is coffee, tea, and water in the back. There is also a cash bar. I'm not saying, advocating going to the bar right now, but if anybody does feel they want to get up and get a refreshment, there is that in the back. So now to you. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I just sense there's maybe some thirsty people in the audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. 53 years ago, Bob and I moved to Kamloops from Victoria, and that's when we met Chris and Gina, who welcomed us into their family. I even became Sarah, Nick, and Martin's piano teacher. Bob and I have so many special memories of all the times that we spent together with Chris and Gina during the past 5 decades. I never thought that I would also teach with Chris. But after I'd been at George Hilliard for 15 years, Chris approached me about transferring to Beatty School, as he was looking for a teacher with a music background. I agreed to the move because Chris told me that Beatty, like George Hilliard, had a great portable stage. Since that's what I needed for performances, I accepted the job and made the move to Beatty that September. Chris was now my principal and my very good friend. However, when December came and I asked the custodian to please put up the portable stage for our K-7 Christmas concert, you can only imagine my shock when he told me that Beatty did not have a portable stage, but they did have some tables that he could push together for me. That was not what I wanted to hear. But by the following December, Chris, who was the ultimate pleaser, had purchased a new portable stage, and now we were both very happy. Chris was a wonderful principal to work for because he was so supportive, kind, and thoughtful. He was completely
That battery die? Okay, what we're gonna do is just give me 1 sec. I'm gonna swap this.
He's well organized.
There you go.
Thank you. Chris was completely involved in every aspect of the school. There was no one who worked harder than Chris. During recess and lunch breaks, you would always see him surrounded by a large group of kids outside on the playground or in the school gym. He memorized the names of every student in the school by early October, and he knew the names of their parents too. Chris also learned something personal about each family that he could talk to them about. This was all about making connections, and he was a master at that because relationships were so important to him. No wonder all the parents and students adored Chris. Chris loved dressing up in costumes for Halloween, Christmas, Easter, or any other special day. He had a variety of different costumes that he used throughout the year. The staff will always remember the day when one of his Santa boots went missing. Thank goodness our secretary, Faye, found it and saved the day. Chris even managed to get the staff to dress up for a staff party that we had on the Wanda Sioux. When it was time for Chris's retirement party, every staff member devised some sort of school uniform to wear, knowing how much Chris wished that everyone would wear a uniform to school every day. He was absolutely thrilled when he saw how we were all dressed. Speaking of parties, I vividly remember Chris inviting Bob and I to a house party that he and Gina were having at their home in Dufferin. We arrived on time, rang the doorbell, and to our amazement, when the door was open, it was a Monty Python party, and everyone in the entire room was dressed in costume except us. Chris had forgotten one small detail when he had invited us. Chris had a heart of gold, and he was always trying to do special things for his staff and his students. One morning, Wendy arrived a few minutes late, so she apologized to Chris before going to her classroom, only to find her class all reading quietly. A little later, Chris was at the door. He came in and explained to the class that Mrs. Madsen had had a very busy morning and they needed to continue reading for a few more minutes. Chris then went to the back table and laid out her breakfast that consisted of bacon and eggs, coffee, orange juice, and even a flower in a vase. He had just purchased it from the Butterdale restaurant, which was right next to the school. Absolutely no one but Chris would ever have done something like that. He was always so caring and considerate. Chris loved celebrations, and anytime someone shared some exciting news with him, he would run over to Safeway immediately and purchase a cake so we could have a staff celebration at recess. Chris was always trying to think of ways that he could help others out. That is really what defined him as a person. One day, just before Christmas, Chris, all dressed up in his Santa outfit, called all the primary kids to the gym during the lunch hour. as he had a Christmas gift from Santa for each student. He had personally wrapped each gift, even though they were all the same. But unfortunately, when Chris had labeled the gifts, he had only put the first names on the gifts, so there was lots of confusion, to say the least. But with a little bit of help from the staff, every child received a gift, and they were also very excited. Chris tried so hard to make school a very special place for students and staff, and he did this very successfully. After Chris retired, he served for 3 terms as a school trustee on the Kamloops-Thompson School Board. He did an excellent job as a trustee, and he was extremely well respected by fellow trustees and administrators throughout our province. But after 9 years as a trustee, Chris now wanted to become more involved in some of his other projects, like the Chris Rose Therapy Center. So he approached me and convinced me, only as Chris could do, to run for office. So during the 10 years I was a trustee, I certainly appreciated Chris's knowledge and support so much. We would often meet for coffee, and he was always there to guide me in the right direction. In 2008, Sharon Simpson, a former parent at Beatty School, asked me to join a small group of individuals whose purpose was to nominate Chris for an honorary doctorate degree from Thompson Rivers University. Everyone who knew Chris was thrilled when he was selected for this prestigious award, which was presented to him at the 2009 True Convocation. What a memorable day that was for Chris's family, his friends, and our entire community. Bob and I have been extremely fortunate to have had such wonderful friends with Chris and Gina all these years. Chris was loved by so many people because he was such a unique and amazing person, and he will be terribly missed by all of us. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Bob and Joan. Next person, Dan, you want to come up? So Dan Hines. Got to make sure I read this off. So Dan's a facilitator, organizational consultant, teacher, coach, Anglican priest, and friend. I think it was a little longer, but hopefully I got that right. Okay, yeah.
Afternoon, everybody. Gina, Martin, Nick, and Sarah, thanks, and all of Chris's family. I'm just really grateful to say a few words in tribute of Chris Rose. He was a mentor as well as a friend. I first met Gina and Chris at the cathedral. I came in the door as a young dad with a family, and of course they immediately befriended us and cared for not just myself and Kelly, but also our kids too. And then as the years went on, that was 34 years ago now, just became friends and had dinners together and great conversations. Chris was also, after really problematic church meetings, Chris and I would debrief with one another and talk about what just happened in that room. One story stands out for me as well. It was a beautiful thing that Chris did for me. When I took a foray into politics and ran for the provincial election, my team asked me who would I get to speak at our campaign launch. And I immediately said, I want to ask Chris Rose. And I asked Chris, and he agreed, and he spoke so beautifully and eloquently. And the reason I asked Chris is I was looking for someone who understood that being a leader was being a servant, and that leadership and service is missing in our larger political world, and just for him to be able to speak with so much authenticity and integrity. We've been talking the last few years about Gina and Chris coming sailing with us on our sailboat down the Okanagan, and Chris was really excited about trying to make this happen and looking forward to this summer, and then his health shifted and changed, and it just a deep regret that it never worked out. But it was fun talking about it and dreaming about them being with us. I mean, we all have these, I was searching for a metaphor to speak to this afternoon, and I thought of a river and tributaries. We all have people who have been sources of our life that flow into this river that is me and you, and into this ocean we call society. This flow of relationships that we gain something unique from each river that flows into our life. And so I was trying to think of the flow of Chris Rose. Like, what would be the way I describe that water, that energy, that life force? So here's a few words that came to mind when I think of Chris, and when I think about him being a tributary in our lives. Decency. Chris was a decent person. And there's a short supply of this in our world right now, just decency. Attentiveness. I've heard this a couple times, both at the church service and even just now. When Chris was listening, he was listening. When he was talking to me, he was focused. And I would notice that Chris would be like that with everyone I watched him encounter. He paid attention. The other word I would use for Chris is animated. As a priest, when I was a priest at the cathedral, there were a lot of times I would preach, and it's a bit intimidating when you look out over the crowd and you see all the bored, tired, confused faces out there. But I would often lock onto Chris because he was always so eager and keen to hear what I was going to say next. He would also laugh at the really not good attempts at humor and found something wonderful in them. So he was kind of an anchor for me. He was one of these people I could always trust, and if I felt I was not quite making a good show of it, I could always lock onto Chris and get more encouragement to keep going because of his smile, his face. But there's an old term, countenance, his countenance. Collaborative. When I think of Chris's tributary in our lives, he was a team player. He understood how to be silent in a meeting, in a gathering, allowing others to speak, and then kind of summarizing what just happened in some way, to reflect back and to bring consensus to a conversation. So that's bottom-up kind of leadership. That's what Chris displayed. Martin said something at the service too, and Martin, I was also searching for the word for this. I didn't have a single word. So I will call it a kind of old-fashioned gentleman. And I don't mean any disrespect by the word old-fashioned. I just don't have any other way to describe Chris's tradition of values, his manners, his decorum. But it wasn't stuffy, like there was a playfulness in it all, but there was a seriousness as well. And I love this about Chris. I've really tried to learn how he brings the best of the past into the present and how to be a gentleman, even if this word sort of sounds strange in this world at this time. The last description of Chris I want to offer is an inclusive faith. It's a very creative tension to know what you believe, to know who you are, and yet to also be radically open to others, to what they believe. Chris had a deep prayer life, a deep relationship with God, yet he remained open to a broader definition than oftentimes what was spoken in church, in the dogma and doctrines and just the liturgy of the church. But Chris could expand that, and I think it was because he lived his life as an educator. He lived his life as an organizational leader with a wide diversity of people. But I think on a deeper level, it also comes from growing up in Africa, in a different culture, among people that gave him an exposure and a richness of what the human family could be, both there and everywhere that he showed up as an educator. So I leave it now for others to say more. These are the few ways that I understand the flow of Chris Rose into the river of my life, into your life. My prayer this afternoon is to continue to bring into the world Chris's life of a blessing to others in each encounter, and to remain faithful like he did to a life of love and kindness. And may the one who loves us all May he receive him into arms of mercy, into the glorious company of saints in light. Amen.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody, if you feel you want to get up now and get something to drink, or just then transfer over to, so Wanda, Eddie will talk next. And so Wanda is the executive director of the Chris Rose Center for Autism Therapy and friend, and I'm sure she'll share more.
Thank you. Probably need a little bit lower, thanks.
Is that good?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. In January of 1996, I became the occupational therapist at Giant Steps West. I was a relatively new grad. I just had graduated in the summer of 1995. I was in my early 20s, and by the spring, the center had decreased its hours due to funding issues, and by the end of that school year, the center had closed its doors permanently. As the story goes, Mark Spina approached Chris Rose at his principal's retirement party in June and asked his plans. He said, "Don't have a project yet." And she said, "What about rebuilding the center?" And the journey begins. Chris called me, invited me to lunch. Lunch with Chris. How little did I know how lunch with Chris can change you. I think some people in the room here probably know what lunch with Chris meant. He discussed his plans, and we together started rebuilding the center. He started to secure funding, while we started the program with a few staff, a few children, and only a few days per week. I went to some of those meetings with Chris. He was a quiet force. By that, I mean he listened, he developed plans, and he executed those plans. Never pushy. Chris was genuine, and people trusted that and trusted him. By the end of the 1996-97 school year, we were running 5 days a week. We had more than doubled our students, and the original team was reestablished and doing the work we do. Over those initial years, if there was a need, Chris had a plan. Staff need mentorship, send them to Giant Steps Montreal. Need more staff, more equipment, fundraise more. The center staff, the educators in our area, and parents in this community need more training in autism. Bring experts from all over the world and hold an international autism conference in this room every second year. Yep, that's what Chris Rose did. People would say, "How come this conference isn't in Vancouver?" And the answer was, because Chris Rose lived here. He did that. Now, Chris didn't do things alone. He recognized others' talents and expertise and brought them along to the team. Another true gift of Chris Rose. Chris recognized the center's need for a rainy day fund or plan and funding in case funding waned. And this was a challenge in the years before Chris came to Giant Steps West. So he created a foundation. When Chris was principal at BD, he had tried to have one of his students enrolled at the center, and there were financial barriers to that enrollment. And when Chris was executive director, he removed those barriers so that that child could attend and did attend. And other students can attend now that may have had similar barriers. Chris always educated himself. He was well read and would often come to me with books to read and new therapy ideas to explore. You see, the world of autism has changed greatly over the last 30 years. Incidence of autism, when I first started at the center, was 1 in 10,000. Today in Canada, it's 1 in 50 are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And Chris, he stayed educated in these changes well after he was no longer executive director. In 2002, the center was renamed the Chris Rose Therapy Center for Autism in honor of his commitment and his recognition that without Chris, the center would not exist today. And I promise you, that won't change while I'm here at the center. Chris loved to fundraise. He always had new and creative ideas. We've held several dinners here, black tie affairs, that was Chris. We had a choir out at Paul Lake. Here's Paul Lake. They had this great symphony. That was Chris Rose's idea. We had to bring food in because they didn't even have a store at Paul Lake, but that was Chris Rose. St. Paul's Cathedral, many fundraisers there. In fact, we had a art night once, and Parm Armstrong, she sat in the corner and painted this amazing picture while we had the event. I saw Parm earlier today, and I said, you wouldn't have done that for, there she is, you wouldn't have done that for anybody else but Chris Rose, right? And she said, you're right. I mean, Chris just inspired us. He didn't just have an idea, though. He was committed to the idea and would see it through completion. He'd find other people to help and be instrumental in its success. Just this past spring, he held a very successful breakfast at the Seniors Village. It was so special to work with Chris on this project and feel our team synergy again. I love seeing Chris in action. One idea Chris had suggested many years ago was Seeds for Hope. Now, listening to Bob, I realized this was an idea he had done years ago in the 70s. In the 2000s, we didn't think we could make it go, though. So what we've done today is, I've just been thinking this a lot since Chris's passing. So it just was in my head. In fact, I think Chris is in my head sometimes. And so today we brought Seeds of Hope with us. They're in the back there, and I hope that you gather them. So we've had art projects of the students and adults at the Chris Rose Therapy Center put onto the front of these envelopes, and we are asking, not as a fundraiser, but in the memory of Chris and the hopes he had for the children at the center and their families, to keep his memory and spirit alive, to plant these seeds which are forget-me-nots, in the spring, in his memory. Chris had a talent for recruitment, staff, board of directors, and volunteers. A lunch or coffee with Chris often resulted in a long-term commitment to the center and Chris's vision. I can't tell you how many board members have said to me, well, you know, you can't say no to Chris Rose. Chris had a way of making everyone feel heard and special, and we've heard this over and over again. He took time. He knew what was important to each person and remembered that and connect with you. He was genuine. He made you feel like family. And at the center, he developed that family atmosphere, that caring, safe space, that acceptance. Families feel that. The individuals we serve feel that. Our staff and board of directors feel that and are committed to it. Chris did that. That's his legacy. I don't really know the number of lives Chris impacted. It's hundreds directly, and really immeasurably indirectly. And that impact will continue for generations. I am so lucky to have Chris as my mentor, to be able to learn from, observe, and benefit from his strength, his intelligence and knowledge, his energy, his genuineness, his sense of fun, and we all had a lot of laughs. That's a true gift, and he has shaped who I am as a person and as a professional. You may have heard of the term work wife. Well, Chris was my work dad. His influence and impact on my life is immeasurable. He will always provide guidance. Like I said, I often have Chris thoughts guiding and encouraging me. In fact, I have one about his birthday we got to talk about later on today. I want to thank Gina for her support. We all know that Gina is the woman behind the man, and her love and support of Chris was a part of who he was. Today we attempt to immortalize a man with words, and really, Chris was so much more. He was heart, light, and integrity. That smile lit up the room. That was his internal beauty. His legacy will live on in Gina, their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. It will live on in the lives and adults that have attended the center, do attend the center, and will attend the center in the future. And of course, their families. It will live on in the board of directors and the staff and myself. Until we meet again, my friend.
Thanks, Wanda. That was a very nice speech. Next we're going to hand over the Order of BC to Wanda with the Grace Rose Center. Gina is just in the washroom right now. So why don't, I think we can kind of do this if anybody wants to get up right now and get something to drink, and then when she comes back in, we'll basically resume, if that's okay. Hopefully it's just a couple minutes. So she's coming in now, actually, so yeah. Yeah. This is Dad's Order of BC. But she's, I think, at home having a nap. So the plan was to have 4 generations of the ladies and the women and girls in the family handing it over. But there are 3 generations here. So Wanda, we just would like to hand over Dad's Order of BC that he got in 2010. And I'm sure it'll be displayed somewhere in a nice case or something like to that effect. And very appropriate. I think, you know, he was honored given the opportunity to have the center named after him, and he'll sit there for as long as the center is around, and we hope that continues for a very long time. So thanks very much, Wanda. Yeah. Sure, yeah. Okay, so while Mom's on the stage, she wasn't sure. She unfortunately, after Dad passed away, she's been a bit ill, but she's got the energy. She's going to share a fun story from when we first arrived in North Vancouver. So,
This is a short story.
okay.
You've been through a long day, but I want you to remember this little story that is so dear to me. When we first came to BC, to Vancouver, we bought a little house in the most delightful neighborhood where everybody had the same lawn. You could run, all the kids could run up and down in front of the windows of the houses. And when Chris came back from work, he used to, well, the children would come out and then he would tickle them and they would be rolling along the lawn and having a great time. So this particular day, because Chris did work sometimes, he was already he wasn't home yet. The school was just right behind our block, so he walked to school. And one day, there's a knock on the door, and I look around the corner where there's a window, and there is about half a dozen munchkins out there. And one sticking out proudly, I could see a leader coming, and I opened the door and then, "Can Mr. Rose come out and play?"
Okay, so we're getting close to the intermission. Just before, we're going to have Mara Odette, who's the occupational music therapist at the Grace Rose Center. And she's going to sing a song while we have the song playing, I have to switch over to a slideshow. If you want to get set up, Mara, and then I'll let you know when I'm ready.
Troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and
just let that run through. There's a few more pictures there. And then once that's done, we'll take a break, and there's snacks over out to that side. And like I said, there's refreshments over here, a cash bar, and I'm sure Chris would appreciate a toast at some point. That's what he would do. But we'll just let these run through. A rendition of Swan Lake with John Crow. I think the Crows can probably remember that. So we've got a couple people that will get up open mic. And I do have one more slide at the end here. So I'm not sure if people want to either just chat and sit as you are, or if you want to sit back in your seats. But I'm going to welcome Katrina and Michael Crow to come up and share a little story that they have about Chris. Not sure where they are. Oh, here we are. Okay, so we've got Katrina and Mike. Yeah. Do you want to just do that? I think it's fine, because I think after the final slide, then everybody can kind of just do their thing. Okay, so Katrina and Michael are children of John and Jean Crow, who were close friends of our parents. So they're going to come up and impromptu just share a nice story. And then we'll encourage anybody else, if they want to come up and share any stories. And if there aren't any more takers, we've got one more slide. I'm not trying to wrap things up, but I think it'd be appropriate before too many people leave to try to finish off, and then we can, mingle and continue on chatting with each other. So I'll hand it over to, who's going to go first? Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Because I'll have the early. Can you pull up that slide of the dying duck?
Oh, okay.
It's possible.
I'm not sure if I can stop it there.
Okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So, Katrina Crow.
Hello, everyone. Michael, my brother, and my other brother, Stephen, is somewhere in the crowd here, have always been... Yeah? Can everyone hear? Greatly, everything that the Roses have done for our family has just been so important over the years that, and then Gina is so much a part of that, all the children. But of course, Chris was the one who often had the funnier stories that came out of it. And then that led to what really meant so much to us is how much of friends they were to our parents and how much that's enriched their lives, especially through recently the walkie-talkies as well. Our friendship goes back quite a while in that we were often together at Christmases. Even last Christmas, you and Chris were able to join our family just for a relaxing evening. But I think you all saw the, it looks like a Swan Lake piece, but it was actually called The Dying Duck. And it might be a surprise to everyone to discover that it was actually a scripted work. It doesn't look very organized, I know. But I think our dads actually only knew each other for 1 or 2 years when they felt comfortable enough to do that at a Christmas event. And I was quite young, we all were. I just remember them flouncing into the living room, and they were leaping about. And then I think there was some sort of story going on because there was a great deal of activity, but we were all laughing so hard we really couldn't see it. But Chris offered the piece de resistance when he then had the longest dying scene one has ever seen. And the final part was when he went over the back of the couch, but when he did that, he broke the legs on the back of the couch, but then he still had a little time where he had to flounder. You know how long his legs and arms were? So he was floundering behind the couch too. But one of the things that, again, how a moment can stretch for a lifetime. That poor couch was on blocks for the rest of its life. And my parents and Gina and Rose's relationship only strengthened over the years as well. So, which leads to another, especially as I said, in more recent years through the walkie-talkies, which leads to one of Michael's stories that we also remember with great fondness.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, just Chris and Gina have just been a fantastic part of our family. They were family, they are family, and it was a wonderful way to grow up. My story actually relates to something that happened a little later. Our parents loved to travel to Europe, and there was this one instance where Chris and Gina were in France, and they got introduced to this wonderful wine called Pape de Neuf. And after they got back, Chris brought a bottle back, and then he celebrated, shared. Gina brought it back. Don't worry, I'm not going to forget about you in this story, Gina. You're the star of this story. Anyway, so they share the bottle of wine with their friends, including Katrina Stevens and my parents. And it was, Chris just loved it. It was a wonderful wine. And then a little while later, another bottle of this wine shows up. And Chris once again goes on to just about how wonderful this wine is. What he doesn't realize is the second time, Gina, took the empty bottle, filled it with some cheap plonk, balled it up. Homemade, okay. Chris was just going on and on about how wonderful this wine was, and Gina's just killing herself laughing inside. And then, of course, had to share the story with everyone. And it just love that it was Chris's joy, but Gina's, just impish humor. And I love that story. Anyways, just wanted to share that, and it's such a fond memory of Chris and Gina and our families together. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Trina and Michael, for sharing. Okay, so Joni Rose and Hannah Rose. So Joni's going to come up and share a memory that she has of Chris.
So, Chris, thanks. I'm going to try not to get too emotional. Chris was extremely dear to me. Loved him dearly. When Martin and I were married and was welcomed into the family, both Chris and Gina welcomed me in like their own child. And so I felt their unconditional love for many, many years. It's been over 30 years. And they still send me birthday cards and Christmas cards, and the love is there. So. But I have a very dear, sweet story about Chris when I was pregnant with Hannah. Hannah's birthday is the 21st of December, and when we were in St. Paul's Hospital, and they wanted to get us out dearly on Christmas Eve. And do you remember this, Gina? You came and you brought me a big donut to sit on, a blow-up donut to sit on all the way to Kamloops. And for a fun thing, Chris dressed up in his Santa costume and took newborn Hannah and knocked on my parents' door, and there they opened the door to see their grandchild in his arms. And I actually have a lovely picture here of my dad, John Forrester, some of you may know, and Chris smoking a cigar after the baby was brought in. Thank you.
I'm not sure if we got any other takers. So if not, I actually want to share a bit of a story. As we were putting this, okay. Okay, so
And I met Chris when he came to the School for the Deaf in Vancouver. He was both a teacher and the principal there. Okay, I was pretty small. He was a big guy to me, so. There was somebody on sick leave, and so he had come to the school, and he was so friendly. All of us wanted him as our teacher. He was just so friendly towards us, and then when it was time for him to go, we were all so disappointed. Right from the moment we met him, I just can't say enough how friendly he was, and very kind to all of us, and understanding. It was a few years later that he was involved with the Duke of Edinburgh Award, and he had made arrangements for us deaf kids to go out camping, hiking, backpacking, etc., and learn first aid, and he taught us so much about that. And one of the pictures there with Prince Philip was when he had come to the school and taken a look at what we were doing, and Chris had shown him what we were doing out camping and everything. So when he left, we all were wondering what was going on and had found out that he had moved to Kamloops. We just really wanted him to stay. And years later, I happened to bump into him at Sun Peaks with my wife, Linda. And we'd been out cross-country skiing, and there he was. And with Gina there. And it was nice, so I was able to get and visit them a few times up at Paul Lake, as well as at the seniors' home as well. So yeah, it was really nice to see him, and my wife also agrees as to how friendly he was. There was just, we wish there was so many more like him. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think that kind of speaks testament to the stories I was sharing earlier about Jericho School of the Deaf. Did that just go off? No. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. That was very special. So I wanted to just share another, I think this is just a bit of an example of how much of an influence in web, how far that web is cast in town here. Organizing this event here, both for the church and here today, we were trying to figure out how can we get audio-visual equipment, and live streaming, all that stuff is beyond us. I made one phone call to, I think it's called Mastermind Studios, and the guy named Peter Cameron Inglis answered the phone, and it was like, started talking about, can we rent this one camera, how, and he says, well, do you mind me asking who it was who passed? I said, well, it's Chris Rose. Turns out Peter knows Chris Rose, and they're both on the board of directors, is it, Peter, with Ask Wellness? Yeah. So it became, well, he knows Chris Rose very well, and rather than renting a set of camera equipment, he's donated for free. So thanks for that, Peter. Very much appreciated. So the reason why I wanted to push this on is that we still have a couple slides, and I think at that point, everybody feel free to continue to mingle and and whatnot. So let me just switch back over to the other presentation here. So as that comes up, so we have the remainder, of Chris's family on the other side of the globe. So there's many family members from England and Africa that weren't able to be here with us. And so, in closing, and like I said, this isn't closing, see everybody later, feel free to stick around, but this is Chris's great nephew. His name's Isaac Hildebrand. So I always get choked up when I hear bagpipes, but he's played a very nice rendition of Amazing Grace. So we'll share that with you live on video. So I'm not sure where in Zimbabwe that was, but in the background you could see the not your typical flora, I guess you'd call it. Nice savanna somewhere in Zimbabwe. So. Oops. So just the final slide. Rest in peace, Dad. Thanks. So that'll conclude the presentations. Again, feel free to mingle and okay. And thanks for coming, everybody. Yeah.